Hey everyone, welcome to the first ever update video for fantasycritic.games. My name's Steve Fallon, I am the creator of this site, and I've got a couple changes that I'm putting in tonight that I want to be able to give you a taste of, give a little explanation, some behind the scenes perhaps, as to how these different changes work. None of them are that radical, but they are some things that people have asked for and some people have really been looking forward to. So the first new feature I want to talk about concerns eligibility and what is and what isn't allowed in your league. So if I go to the Create a League menu here, you've probably all seen this, but I'm going to put together some real quick settings here. I'll just say 6, and I'm going to say it's 2019. But now, you've probably all seen this, but this is the eligibility settings. You can choose between, only allowing new games, allowing complete remakes, that whole scale. Well, there's a few more now. Down here, you can choose whether or not you want to allow games that are free to play. Sometimes they don't get review scores. They're not the easiest things to review. That kind of ongoing game. Sometimes I recommend that you leave that off and maybe allow it on a case-by-case basis. Another thing that people might not want to have is games that have already been released in other regions. This is really common. Games to come out in Japan, then be translated and come out in America and in English-speaking countries a year, maybe more than a year later. It's another thing that you can have a pretty good sense for how good the game is before it comes out in America, because you can play it in other regions. You can perhaps read a review in Japanese. So it's not all that much for prediction, but again, it's something you could allow on a case-by-case basis. And I'll come back to the case-by-case basis and how that works now. The last one is allowing expansion packs or DLC. I thought about adding another slider like this and categorizing different expansion packs versus, okay, is this a major expansion? Is this DLC? Is this minor DLC? But honestly, it was going to get really complicated. This here is already subjective enough. So what I ended up doing was just saying, if it's an expansion at all, it gets its flag for it's an expansion, and I'm going to leave it for each league to decide what games they're going to allow and what they're not. But you can check these off. They actually all default to off in new leagues because I want to. It's a better system, I think, to restrict games and then have a discussion about what games should be allowed, rather than somebody takes a game and people are like, wait, you really shouldn't be able to have that. That's not that interesting of a game, and then taking it from them. It's much better to be strict and then allow leniency, allow exemptions, rather than to be open and then take games away from people because people think it's unfair. So they all default to off, which leads me into the next feature that I want to talk about. So I'm going to jump into one of these leagues here. This is one of the leagues that I play in. So right here you can see this manually set game eligibility link that I can click on, and I can search for a particular game and choose whether or not that game is going to be allowed in my league. So, for example, this league has the expansion packs allowed right now. But what if we want to say, you know what, Cuphead Last Delicious Course, that one, too predictable, we're not going to allow that, not enough of a new game. So I can mark that as ineligible right there. This works the other way too. If there's a particular game that's not allowed, I can search for that. Like I know that in our league, Catherine Full Body is not allowed. I'm going to select this. I'm going to say that this is allowed. So you can see both directions here. You can ban a game that would be allowed in your league, and you can allow a game that wouldn't be normally allowed in your league. And also you can clear these out too. So to give a demonstration of how the eligibility thing works, I'm going to try to make a bid for a game. I'm going to get that Dragon Quest remaster that's coming out. It's a remaster, and it's not allowed in our league because of our settings. This is classified as a remaster. This league only allows up to a remake. But you know what? Our league decided that we're going to allow this one. So I'm going to click right here, go to the Manage Eligibility Overrides, and search for Dragon Quest. And select this and allow it. So now that's something you can only do if you're the league manager, and your league should definitely agree on whether or not to allow that sort of thing. But now when I go to bid on Dragon Quest, it'll let me do it. And now you can see that I have an active bid for Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of an Elusive Age. Another thing that you might have noticed is that the searching feature is much, much better. If you remember how the searching worked before this update, you'd often get games that would come up when you search something that had nothing to do with what you searched for. The system used to be based on exact matches, like the name of the game contains exactly the letters that you typed, or there's an algorithm that I can't pronounce that's basically a spell check kind of thing, where how close were you to it. But what it ended up was, it just would give you whatever was the closest, whatever you said exactly, if there is an exact match, then a bunch of games with really short names, because those are in general the closest to whatever you type. So it didn't work very well. So I changed the algorithm. We don't need to get into how it works, but it works much, much better. A classic example that didn't work well was if I want to search for Civilization 6, that does work now. The thing is, someone might type something like Civ 6. The whole title of the game is Sid Meier's Civilization VI, Rise and Fall, or Gathering Storm. It's nowhere close to what this is. But with the new searching feature, it's much more likely to find what you want. So last new feature that I want to go over, you've probably seen the Request New Master Game feature before. Maybe you've used it, where you can send me a note saying, hey, you don't have this game in your list, I think you should add it, here's some details about it. You fill out this form here, I can respond to it. Well, another thing that happens a lot is I'll get the details about a particular game wrong. Maybe I categorized it incorrectly. Maybe it's not linked to OpenCritic, or particularly maybe its release date isn't right. Here's a good example. So I know that my friend Pedro just had its release date announced. If I click on it, I now see this suggest a correction right here. I can click on that. It gives me all the stats here. It says that there's only has an estimated release date, but I know that the release date is actually June 20th, 2019. So you can say whatever it is that you want here. This is free-form text. Also, if there is a link to the OpenCritic page, if you can provide that, that'll let me link it really quickly. You can just put in the link right here, just like you would on the Master Game Request feature. So I'm going to submit this. I can see my current requests here. There's response. It's response pending. I can cancel it. Okay, now that I've sent that request, I can go over to my admin console here and take a look at it. Okay, this is a request that I sent to myself. I still have to fix them manually, but just knowing about them, being able to find them really quickly, it helps. So I'm going to fix this behind the scenes, and then we'll see how I handle that. Okay, so I've gone ahead and added the release date for my friend Pedro. I'm going to respond to myself here. I fixed it. Send that back. And then let's go back to from the perspective of someone that sent it. Okay, there it is, release date. It's been fixed. Okay, so now that I've made that correction, I can go back into the league here and click on my friend Pedro, and there's the release date. So this is a, like I said, quality of life thing. Makes it easier for me to make changes when people suggest them. It's easier for me to get to the game that you're telling me to fix better than Reddit or Twitter would have been. That's everything. Like I said, nothing too earth-shattering, but hopefully people appreciate these new features. There's going to be a lot more new features coming in the second half of the year. After E3 is over, there's going to be a big focus on more new gameplay features. Two things I really want to focus on. One is driving engagement throughout the year. So beyond just the pickup games, other ways to interact with the site after the draft to keep people coming back. And also a way to play without a league. So kind of a public leaderboard where you play just with yourself and compete against everyone that's playing in this public version of the site. I think both of those things would be a really great feature to have. And I'm going to focus on something along those lines in the run-up to 2020. That's everything. Enjoy E3, and talk to you soon.